guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm filling you guys in on my son's labor and delivery story. I can't believe I can even say that. I have a son, I have a baby, I'm a mum to more than just animals. I'm a mum to a human now, which is crazy. If you guys follow me on Instagram, you'll already know his name and kind of like a rough idea of how the labor and delivery went. But if you don't, I'll give you a quick rundown. His name is Axel. He is 3 weeks old now. I was so hoping to get on here before now to actually like fill you guys in on his labor and delivery and like what the heck happened. But having a baby and being a mum is like so much more hectic than I was expecting. I can't believe how naive I was before actually having him. I thought having a baby would be so easy. I was so wrong. Anyway, better late than never. I'm here now and I'm gonna tell you guys everything that happened because bloody hell, nothing went according to plan. It didn't, basically everything that I wanted to happen with like his birth didn't happen, and everything I wasn't expecting did happen, if that makes sense. I remember when I was pregnant, people used to ask me all the time, like, are you scared to give birth? Are you like nervous about it? And I was like, no, not at all. And I wasn't, like, I had no nerves at all because I was doing hypnobirthing. So I did a hypnobirthing course here where I live in Donegal, which was amazing. So I'm gonna put the link to that in the description box down below in case any of you guys kind of live around the same area that I do and you're pregnant. Highly recommend you do it. I also listened to an audiobook on hypnobirthing. Funnily enough, it turned out that my situation kind of ended up similar to the book I was listening to because I ended up having an emergency C-section, and so did the author of the book that I've been listening to. The book, let me get it up because I'm going to butcher the name of it otherwise. It's by Holly Cruz and it's called Your Baby, Your Birth, Hypnobirthing Skills for Every Birth. If you guys want to listen to the book for free, I listened to it on Audible. I have my own Audible account. I pay for it. I am a member of Audible, but Audible are also sponsoring me for this video. So if you guys do want to listen to the book for free, Audible has provided me with a link for you guys to go and download one book for free. I recommend you download the one I listen to. So the link is www.audible.com/StephanieLange, or you can text Stephanie Lange to 500 500. That'll get you a free 30-day trial, 1 free audio book, and 2 Audible originals absolutely free. So highly recommend you take them up on that offer. I'll also put it in the description box down below in case you missed any of that. Basically, Audible, if you guys don't know what it is, it's a service where you can download and listen to audiobooks. They have audiobooks on like self-help, comedy, news, education, whatever you can think of, they'll have the audiobook for that. So my baby is downstairs with his dad at the moment, so I will bring him up here and introduce him to you guys at the end of the video. He's just currently having a bottle. I've been like breastfeeding and pumping, so his daddy is giving him a bottle right now while I film. So let's get into the story. So what happened was, I had planned this totally natural, epidural free vaginal delivery. That's what I was like hoping for. I wanted to like go into labor myself at home, like labor as long as I could at home by myself before actually like going to the hospital. Then I was planning on just like pushing him out naturally, having like no pain relief and just doing it all naturally. None of that happened. I ended up being 11 days overdue. Well, not me, my baby was 11 days overdue. Here in Ireland, they only let you go 10 days overdue. I think it is 10 or 11 days overdue before they induce you. So I ended up having to be induced. So I had to go into the hospital on the Sunday night. They make you stay like overnight the night before you be induced. And I wish, looking back, that I would have like saved up and paid the money to go privately, but I didn't because I had no idea what I was like doing. So I went public. And the reason that upsets me is because my like fiance Darren couldn't stay with me, and like he's my support system. So he was at home. I stayed in the hospital the Sunday night. On the Monday morning at 7 a.m. they came and inserted like a gel into my foof, like up around the cervix, and the gel was meant to kind of like ripen your cervix or something like that to make it dilate, because I had been 1.5 centimeters dilated for like a whole week and I just wasn't dilating any further. Like my body just had no intention of going into labor naturally, even though I was so overdue. So they put the gel up and they said like the gel might work or it might not work. If it doesn't work, we'll try again tomorrow. And I was like, like I don't want to be in the hospital like that long. Thank goodness, 3 hours later at 10 a.m. I started feeling contractions, and they were all kind of in my lower back. It just felt like my lower back was kind of tightening. So I started timing them on my little app, and they were coming, I think, every 10 minutes or something like that, these like tightenings. And gradually throughout the day, they just, okay, what is in my eye? Gradually throughout the day, they started getting more and more uncomfortable. So I was in a ward with 5 other women. I wasn't in like a room by myself. I wasn't in the labor ward or anything like that because I wasn't in labor. So I was wherever they put you before you have your baby, before you go into labor. And I was like lying in my bed, just like kind of writhing, I don't know, I was squirming in pain basically because these contractions, they weren't like horrible, like I could handle them, but they weren't comfortable. And I remember I was like kind of like weeping because I was like, I feel so alone and like I feel so scared and I don't know what the heck's happening. And so at about midday, then Darren was allowed to come because like he had to follow visiting hours. So then at midday, Darren turned up and I remember I was like lying in the bed kind of weeping and he was like, oh my god, what's wrong? And I was like, I'm having contractions. So he just stayed with me the whole day. If you guys follow me on Instagram, I was giving you guys like periodic updates of like the whole process. So I'll, at the end of the video, maybe I'll kind of like put the like a little montage of my Instagram stories at the end. In case you guys don't follow me on Instagram, you can just watch them there. I remember I was just bouncing on the ball all day. Me and him were walking up and down the hallway of the hospital all day, trying to get this like labor moving, trying to get something happening. So then visiting hours ended and Darren had to go home and I was like so down because I don't like being on my own, and especially because I was already having contractions, and at this point the contractions were like some were every 5 minutes apart, some would be 3 minutes apart, some would be 7 minutes apart, but they were kind of painful at this point. So Darren went home and then one of the doctors came to see me and she wanted to check had I dilated any further. And I hadn't. I was still at 1.5 centimeters dilated and I was so annoyed with myself. I was like, oh my god, come on body, like you need to get this baby out. Like you're so overdue, go into labor, come on, do something. So the doctor did a stretch and sweep. I'd already had one a week previously, which did nothing except be extremely painful because that doctor had huge hands. This doctor did a stretch and sweep and it wasn't bad at all. But then after she did that night, oh my god, the contractions became intense then. So I remember I was like, what am I gonna do? Like I'm so uncomfortable. I'm in this ward by myself. Like Darren's gone home. I feel so alone. I feel so upset how this is all like unraveling. In the ward, there was this like public, well not public, but there was like a bathroom that all us women shared. So I went and ran myself a bath and I got in the bath and I was in the bath for probably about 2 hours. I just didn't want to get out and like face the world. And I was just like crying in the bath by myself, like wishing that I had paid to go private so I could have Darren there with me as support, because I was like in pain at that point, having really regular contractions, and I just felt so alone. It was just so crap. So anyway, I had to get out of the bath, went to bed, and I actually did manage to get a few hours sleep that night, probably maybe 3 hours sleep all up, something like that. Then at 5 a.m. the next morning, I was kind of dozing on and off, like waking up every so often like with a contraction, but still managing to get a wee bit of sleep, and I heard what sounded like an elastic band snapping. It was like pop, and I remember thinking to myself, like in my half asleep state, I was like, oh my god, imagine if that was my waters, that would be amazing. And next minute, all this fluid started gushing out of me, and I sat up and I was like, oh my god, my waters are broken, yay! I was so excited. I was like, oh my god, yes, this means something's happening, like my waters are broken, I'm probably gonna have my baby today, this is brilliant. So I like, this was at 5 a.m, I texted Darren, I'm like, Darren, my waters are broken! And I like rang my little bell and got the midwife over, and I was like, my waters are broken! And she had a look at them and they were clear, which was good. And I was like, does this mean I get to move to like the labor ward? Because when you get moved to the labor ward, you get your own room where you can actually like labor and have your baby. She was like, no. And I was like, oh, I just wanted to be in my own room where I could like be in pain and peace and like have Darren join me, because like your partner can't join you unless you're in the labor ward room. And I just wanted him there so badly, but she was like, no, you can't be moved to the labor ward yet. And I was like, oh my god, like when will this ever happen? They took me to like this other room where they do like tests on you and stuff. So they hooked me up to like the baby monitors, and they put like the, you know, the wee drip thing in your arm so they can like, oh, I hate it. Oh my god. I made the mistake of getting it in my hand instead of like here, because my friend had a baby 3 weeks before me and she was like, get the drip in your hand. And it was so disgusting. Oh, anyway, I hate needles. And then I went to pee. And when I went to pee, my waters that were still kind of gushing out, I noticed had turned brown. And I was like, ooh, that's not good, because that means that's meconium. If you guys, you know, I mean, I'm sure you probably know what meconium is if you're watching this, but meconium is, like, it means that the baby's pooped. in the womb, and so that's like not a good thing because when they're getting born then sometimes they can like inhale it or swallow it or something like that. So I called the midwife again and I was like, hi, my waters aren't clear anymore, they're brown. So she went to speak to like a few of the other doctors, and then they were like, right, we're gonna put you on the labor ward. And I was like, yes! I was so excited and all, except the moment my waters broke, pretty much instantly the contractions went from being moderately painful to extremely painful, where I had to literally stop talking and just like focus and breathe through them. So this went on for a good couple of hours. I think Darren got there at 7 a.m, so probably like 2 hours after my waters broke, because we live quite far away from the hospital and he had to get all the dogs like sorted and fed and all, because he didn't know how long he was going to be gone from the house. So by the time he turned up, I was like in the labor ward in my little room. Finally I had the room to myself, and I was like squirming in pain on the bed, like having serious contractions. And every time I had a contraction, I was wearing this like big like maternity nappy kind of thing, but every time I would have a contraction, the waters were just pouring out of me. And I mean, like, I can't believe I had that much water in my belly. Like, it was gross. So much water, and it was brown too. Every time I had a contraction, it was like my body was squeezing the water out and I couldn't stop it. And the nappy was like, even though it was this huge nappy, the nappy wasn't containing it, and I was sat on a pee pad in a nappy and still the waters were like running down my leg onto the floor. But at that point, I was in so much pain, I didn't care. I was just like, help me. So Darren turned up, and poor guy, his face was white. He was like, oh my God, what can I do? What can I do? It must be hard for the like partner seeing you in so much pain and they can't do anything to help you. So he was like sat down, and bless his heart, he was like trying to stroke me, trying to massage me, like this stuff that we learned in hypnobirthing. And I was like, don't touch me. I was trying to concentrate on not dying, basically. So long story short, this was like at 7 a.m. And then I think maybe 2 hours after that, they checked me to see had I dilated, like how was this labor going, because I was like in a lot of pain at this point. Like the contractions were so much worse than I ever expected they would be. So they checked me and I hadn't dilated at all. And I was like, what the hell? Like, I've been having contractions for like over a day now. How have I not dilated? Like, what is going on here? So I was just really frustrated at that point, because I was like, I'm in so much pain, but nothing's happening. And from memory, because it's all a bit hazy, I think they said, we'll let you go for another 4 hours and then we'll check you again and see how much you have progressed then. So 4 hours in, I labored on the bed, and I remember like in the breaks, because like the contractions were really, really close together. I think they were like 3 or 4 minutes apart, but in the 3 or 4 minutes where I got a break, I was so hungry because I hadn't eaten anything. So Darren was sat there like feeding me Pringles into my mouth, and I was just sat there like with like water dripping out of me. Oh my God, I must have looked an absolute state. So then 4 hours passed and the doctor came to check me again, and I think at this point I was only at 4 centimeters dilated, and I'd been in labor for a long time at this point, and I was expecting that I'd be at least 6 centimeters dilated from the amount of pain that I was in. And at this point I was just like, I kind of gave up. I was like, I'm in so much pain, I don't know if I can do this for like another however many hours it's going to take for me to get from 4 centimeters dilated to 10 centimeters dilated. And you know what the issue was, guys? I've got endometriosis, and so all the contraction pain for me was in my bowel. It wasn't the contractions themselves that were like doing my head in, it was the pressure on my bowel, because my endometriosis is like attached to my bowel. So it literally felt like I had a knife in my bowel, like stabbing me repeatedly every time I had a contraction, and that's what was agony for me. And I kept trying to explain it to the midwives, but either they probably were listening, but like there's nothing I could do about it. So at this point I was just so in like extreme agony and so down on myself that I was like, I need an epidural, because I cannot continue like this for another 20 hours. Like, I need help and I need it now. And so I was like, please, please, please get me the epidural. So the midwife, bless her heart, like I had the best midwives. They were so calming and so lovely. So she rang for the anesthesiologist, is that what they're called? And unfortunately he was in theatre, so he couldn't come to my rescue. To cut long story short, 2 hours later I finally got my epidural, and at this point I had tears streaming down my face. I was in the most agony I have ever dreamt of in my wildest dreams. Like, when I try and think back to how much pain I was in, I can't actually remember or explain how painful it was. But I was literally on the bed screaming. I couldn't like move, but I couldn't sit still. Oh, it was hell. It was so horrible. And I was just like, where is this epidural? Like, he's never coming. He's never coming. Please call him again. Please help me, help me. It was so bad. And I hope, oh my God, guys, if you are pregnant and watching this, please don't let this scare you, because it definitely wasn't like my ideal birth, but I got my beautiful son at the end of it, so it's all worth it. And you kind of like I said, you forget how bad the pain was. You just kind of remember that it was painful. So I've just got to be totally honest with you guys and tell you how my labor and delivery went, but don't let this scare you, because my birth won't necessarily be your birth, if that makes sense. So anyway, by the time the anesthesiologist finally got to me and put the epidural into my back, I was just beside myself with pain. So the epidural, he put it in and he left, and it didn't work. It worked on both the sides of my body, but in the middle where I had all the pain, it didn't work. So like my left hip was numb, my right hip was numb, but like in the middle where like my foof and my womb and everything is, I could still feel every contraction there, and I was like, oh my God, all this time and the epidural hasn't worked. I had the walking epidural, by the way, so like I could still get up and move around, like I could still move my legs and everything, but I didn't want to because I was like in too much pain to move, and my bowel felt like it was going to be ripped open. So then we had to wait, I think it was another like 40 minutes to an hour for a different anesthesiologist to come and fix my epidural. So finally a different one came, and he was brilliant. He had to like get the needle in my back and like move it around so it hit the right nerves or whatever. But then it worked. So he actually got it working, and oh my God, the relief. Basically, if I ever get pregnant again and I go to have a vaginal delivery, I will be getting the epidural right from the get-go, because oh my goodness, it was like I was on a holiday. I was so calm then, and all I was doing, I just kept apologizing to the midwives. I'm like, I'm so sorry that I was yelling at you. I'm so sorry. I was so like grumpy. Like, please forgive me. Then I could chat to Darren, and I couldn't feel the contractions, and I was like, oh, I could do this for hours. I could do this for another 2 days. Then a few hours passed, and I still hadn't had the baby, and the doctor came to check me again, and I was still at 4 centimeters dilated. And at that point, the doctors were like, Stephanie, I think you need to have a C-section, because the meconium in the waters kind of meant the baby was in distress, and I was not progressing. Like, I basically was not getting any further than 4 centimeters dilated, and I should have at that point, because at this point I'd been in active labor all day. Like, this was the evening time. And this whole time I was also hooked up to the CTG machine, or whatever that's called, where they monitor like the baby's heart rate. And at this point his heart rate was starting to get a bit erratic as well, which basically meant that he was getting tired. And so the doctor was like, Stephanie, we highly recommend that you have a C-section because you need it. And at that point I was like so over the whole thing. I was like, please just get him out. And so then everything happened really quickly. So basically, like, they took me off the CTG thing, they put me on a different bed, they wheeled me through all the corridors, like up the different levels in the hospital to the theatre. And I remember I was just lying on my back, like being wiggled through, and I was going through like the maternity ward, and the midwives were just like, and I was lying there like, I remember thinking to myself, I'm gonna die. Like, I am going to die. It was like, I was shitting myself. I was so bloody scared. They got me into the theatre, and at this point I was like so nervous that I was shaking, and I kind of couldn't stop shaking because I was so scared. Darren was out getting prepared, so I was in there by myself, and I remember they like strapped both my arms down on either side of me and put like a different drip. I had a different drip then put in my elbow anyway, and I can't get the damn stickiness off my arm. Can you guys see that? Where they like stuck the drip thing in, I can't get that off. It's like stuck to me forever now. So they strapped my arms down on either side of me. They put the big sheet up. I remember the operating doctor, he was like pinching me in my abdomen, and he's like, can you feel this? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, okay, can you feel this? And he was like pinching me in all these different areas, and he's like, can you feel this? Can you feel that? And I was like, yes, I can feel all of it. Like, I can feel that you're pinching me. And he was like, okay, we might have to put you to sleep. Fully knock me out. And I was like, oh my God, please, no. Like, that's one of my greatest fears. I'm so scared of that, because I'm like, what if I don't wake up? Like, I'm a warrior. I worry about everything. And I was like, please, please, please don't put me to sleep. So they didn't put me to sleep. They gave me a spinal block, I think it was called. So then I couldn't feel anything kind of like from my rib cage down. So I couldn't feel my legs, and I couldn't move my legs or anything like that. And they also had to top up my actual epidural. So at that point, the shakes got so much worse because I was so fatigued, and I hadn't eaten, and I had all these drugs being pumped through my system, and I was literally like shaking like that, and I couldn't stop it. And the more I tried to stop shaking, the more I shook, and like my teeth were chattering. Anyway, then they got straight down to business. I heard them slice me open, like I heard the like noise, and I kind of felt the pressure of it, but like it didn't hurt. Darren wasn't in the room at this point. They just kind of, I guess they had to get things like, they had to get the baby out basically. So they were like halfway through it when they brought Darren in. He was like sat next to me and I couldn't look at him because I've got an ectopic heartbeat, which isn't dangerous. It just means that my heartbeat kind of goes erratic sometimes. Like it'll beat really fast or really slow, but I had this like worry in my head that I was going to have a heart attack then and there on the table and die and not be able to look after my baby. I'm a very anxious person, in case you couldn't tell. Like I worry about everything. So I remember I was lying there on the table and I just was focusing on not dying. I was like, just breathe, stay calm, stop shaking. And Darren kept trying to talk to me and I was like, shut up. And then I could feel them kind of like tugging and pulling. Like you can feel like that your body is like being moved from side to side and that they're tugging something out of you, but like it's not painful or anything like that. You know how in like the documentaries and the movies and stuff, they hold the baby up so you can see? They didn't do that. They took him straight over to the table to, I guess, clean him off and everything. And that's another thing that upset me because I really wanted delayed cord clamping, but we didn't get that because the cord was wrapped around his body twice. So they had to, I guess, cut the cord straight away and get him over. And I remember I heard like a little cry off in the corner and I was like, oh my God, Darren, like, is the baby over there? And Darren looked over and he was like, well, there is a baby over there, but I don't know if it's ours. And I was like, well, who the else would it be? And he was just like peering over at this baby and I was just watching him, watching the baby. I was like, what is going on here? I felt like ages later, they brought the baby over to us and kind of like put his head next to my head. And I remember I just looked at him and I saw his wee smooshed face and I was like, oh my gosh. But I was too scared to kind of look at him or pay him too much attention in case I overwhelmed myself and I died then and there on the table, because I was like literally in survival mode, guys. Like I was so scared and so overwhelmed and just so, like everything was just so beyond me that I was like, please take him away. Like I was just focusing on trying to stay alive. And another thing in my birth plan was I wanted an hour of skin to skin with my baby straight after he was born. But obviously because I had a C-section and they had to sew me up, that couldn't happen. So they took the baby away and they took Darren, and baby and Darren went down to like a different room somewhere else in the hospital and they had an hour of skin to skin contact, which is great. I'm glad that my baby had skin to skin with one of us. If it couldn't be me, I'm glad it was Darren. But what really upsets me is that I never got to see this. Like I never got to see kind of like their first meeting or how Darren like reacted to having like a baby. Like in my birth plan, and what I really wanted was that like I was going to be able to like deliver him myself and he was going to be put up on my chest and I was going to have skin to skin and I was going to be able to see Darren react to becoming a father and seeing his baby. I got none of that. So I never saw Darren meet the baby. Like I never saw the skin to skin or anything like that. And that still really upsets me, but what can you do? So I was just lying there on the table and they were like, I guess, getting the placenta out and stitching me up and all that jazz. And I remember I was just saying to them, like, is it over yet? Like, are you done yet? Like, hurry up. Because I just couldn't handle it anymore. Like, I was like, this is never going to end. Finally it did, and they wheeled me off to a recovery room because I couldn't stop shaking. And I was in the recovery room for, I think, about 2 hours. And I was lying there just shaking. And I was like, Stephanie, you need to stop shaking or they're not going to let you like go down and see your baby. But I couldn't stop shaking. I was like this and my teeth were like this and I was all woozy. Like the room was just spinning and I couldn't stop the room spinning and I was like tired, but I didn't want to sleep in case I didn't wake up. Eventually they wheeled me down to the postnatal ward where you go after you've had your baby. So I was back in a room with like loads of other women and I just really wanted that time with me and Darren and the baby, like a bit of privacy, but I didn't go private, so that's what happens. And another thing that was like really bugging me was that I couldn't feel my legs and I couldn't move my legs and I still had a catheter in and I still had all these needles and drips in my arm and I just felt like I couldn't move even though I couldn't stop shaking. And every time I tried to move my legs, it was the worst feeling when you try and move your leg but nothing happens. It just freaked me out completely. So they put me in this room and I had a little corner of the room and they pulled the curtains around me. And finally Darren came back and I was like, Darren, like how's the baby? Like I hadn't even hardly seen, like I had that glimpse of him when they put him next to my face, but I hadn't seen him really. Didn't really know what he looked like or anything like that. And I was like, Darren, like, is the baby okay? And he was like, yeah, he's amazing, he's brilliant. And I was like, how big is he? Darren was like, he was 9 pounds and half an ounce. And I was like, what? Because I'm a small person, I'm 5'4" and I'm quite scrawny, and I was only 6 pounds when I was born and Darren was 7 pounds, so I was expecting a baby kind of around that size, but he was 9 pounds, which is a really big baby. And I was like, whoa, that is so much bigger than I was expecting. And the thing is, which I found out later when the doctor came to speak to me, was that I was never going to be able to birth him naturally myself, because the reason I wasn't dilating, the reason I wasn't progressing, was because his head was up at an angle against my cervix. So his head was at the wrong angle. It wasn't pressing down on my cervix. It was like skew-if. So that's why my body couldn't progress and I couldn't dilate, because he was at a bad angle and the cord was wrapped around him twice. So I was never actually going to be able to birth him naturally. So I am so grateful and thankful that C-sections are a thing, because otherwise I would have been in a big mess. So I'd say probably about half an hour after that, then they brought the baby in to us and I actually got to like see him properly for the first time. But I couldn't hold him or lift him or anything like that because I was so weak, and I still at this point couldn't stop shaking, but like I couldn't even hold my own arms up. I was so weak and I wanted to hold him so badly, but I just couldn't. So I just had to like look at him in his little clear crib and just like admire him from afar. So we stayed like that for about an hour, and then Darren had to leave because I think the father's only allowed to stay for I think an hour after you give birth, unless it's visiting hours, and then they have to leave. So then I was alone again with the baby, but I still couldn't move, and I was like, I don't know how to look after a baby, and I can't move, and I can't stop shaking, and I'm so weak. But the midwives were like really helpful and they helped me look after him that night. So basically that's what happened. That's how the labor and delivery of my baby boy Axel went. It wasn't what I expected, but I am so grateful that I had amazing doctors and really lovely midwives that helped me. So I'm just glad that I've got my precious baby boy with me. He was worth everything, and for him I will get sliced open every day of the week. So I might actually get Darren to bring him up here so I can introduce you guys to him. Come to mama.
No. Bert.
Me? Oh my god, you're too big to fit here. This is
What are all
Darren,
these
by the way,
lights,
guys.
Axel?
Oh no, it's too bright for him. Oh, this is Axel. This is my baby.
Axel, don't want to look at the camera.
Oh, it's too bright. Oh.
I can't even see.
Shall I turn some of the lights off?
Yes.
Okay. Wow, that's terrible lighting, isn't it? This is my baby. Oh, he's so grumpy. Did we wake you up? Oh no, my hair's all in his face. Help. This is him. I love you. You are the most
Would you
handsome
like me to lift
baby.
the camera in?
You tired and hungry, huh?
Mm-hmm.
You sleepy?
Oh, your hair.
Yeah, he's got loads of hair. Hello, darling. It's too bright, huh? I'll let you go back with your daddy.
Alright, buddy. Bye-bye.
Oh, little man. I'm so proud. I'm so in love. I still can't believe that just 4 weeks ago he was like in my belly. So thank you guys so much for all your well wishes. They are so appreciated by me and my little family. That'll do it for this video, guys. I hope it's not going to be too long. I feel like I was rambling on for a very, very long time. Thank you so much for watching. I love your guts, and I'll see you next week. Bye. Guys, we've just got to the hospital now, and I've got to go check in. I'm feeling so slightly nervous. I'm just trying to like remain calm and zen. But I know I have to share a room tonight with like the other women that are getting induced tomorrow morning, so I don't know if I'll be able to like Instagram or anything without looking like a creep, so we'll just see. Okay, we're out. I didn't realize that you could actually like leave the hospital and go and get dinner and stuff. I thought once I was there I was kind of like prisoner, but they've done all the checks, so they had the heart, like the CTG heart tracing thing on. He's happy. Yeah, so me and Darren are just out to get some dinner, and then I'll go back and have a shower and try and get an early night's sleep. They are gonna they're gonna try and break my waters at 7 a.m. tomorrow, but they can only do that if I'm 3 centimeters dilated, so fingers crossed. Otherwise, they just put the gel in, and then 6 hours after that, they check you again.